Hi there, Browns fans, and welcome to the premiere of the Gang of Three. That's what we're calling this thing, at least as of this morning, until we figure out a better name for it. Joining me, of course, making three are Mr. Pete Smith and Mr. Lane Adkins. Pete, how's it going, buddy?
Mixed, I suppose, given what we watched. A lot of what I would say good process, bad result type game.
Yeah, exactly. How are you recovering, Lane?
Just another day after a Browns giveaway.
Exactly. And, I've seen the comments in the chat already, people saying, man, I don't want to relive that game. And that's not really what we're going to do. We're not going to go blow by blow in terms of what happened in the game and all that depressing crap. What we're going to talk about is, trying to get a sense of what the team is going to have to do to adapt in the future and what they're thinking about doing to adapt to, the 2025 season. So we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about, the details, but we are going to go into what happened on Sunday because it's relevant for next Sunday. The Browns obviously dominated statistically over the Bengals. They got 22 first downs to 11 for Cincinnati, 327 total yards to 141, more than double. They held Joe Burrow to 95 net passing yards and still lost somehow. And we're going to go into the reasons for that. Lane, speaking mostly as a fan here, this seems like an only in Cleveland type situation. You know what I mean? Do you believe that, or do you believe it's just a team that paid for 3 or 4 really bad plays on a close game?
No, that's not an only in Cleveland thing. I mean, the Browns defensively played an outstanding game. They were fundamentally sound and did what they had to do. Offensively, they were methodical, held the ball, played within the script, did a fabulous job on man coverage and getting the running backs outside, and a guy like Dylan Sampson just playing his ass off. What it came down to is a kicking game. And the Browns, historically under Stefanski, when there's not a missed kick during the game, the Browns are an efficient and effective winning team. When they miss kicks, the Browns lose games, and we saw that coming from a kicker who had an outstanding summer, and it was the unexpected that happened on Sunday.
Absolutely. Pete, you don't seem like an only in Cleveland type guy to me. You seem like a guy who will just point at the key errors that the Browns made during the game, or do you think that there's something else going on here?
I mean, there's a cartoonish quality to the way the Browns managed to lose these games in terms of having, whether it's the missed field goals or, it's unusual to have a ball tip off a receiver's hands up and find a DB once in a game. To do it twice is preposterous. But, the reason I say it's not an only in Cleveland thing is, one, the Falcons lost on a missed kick and on a much more well-paid kicker. And then for people who stayed up way past Barry's bedtime, they saw the Ravens gag a 15-point lead in what feels like a game that the Browns could have lost and did, frankly, to the Jets a couple of years ago. So, on some level, this is what the NFL wants. They are designing the game to sort of work this way. But certainly, the Browns find a way to do it more, comically than other teams do it in a way that gives you that only in Cleveland sort of sense.
Yeah, special things happen to us, but let's get into the tail of the tape here, so to speak. We've got a bunch of, if you're familiar with me from doing OBR Weekly, you know that I'll bring some stuff here to the show that I want to talk about. But I really want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. So let us know in the comments if you have any specific questions or things that you want us to talk about. But what I want to deal with first is sort of the key to the game, which unfortunately goes by the name of Andre Schmidt. He was one of two with point after attempts hit a 45-yard field goal, and then missed wide right a 36-yard field goal. Obviously, turnovers played a huge role here. But, Lane, let's talk about the kicker first. You think they're going to dump this kicker and start rolling veterans through here, despite what Stefanski said to the press today? What are you hearing in terms of the leash that Schmidt has?
Well, throughout this training camp, the place kicker situation was very fluid, and it came down to the last day, basically, when they selected Schmidt over Dustin Hopkins, and that situation is going to remain fluid, especially after what happened on Sunday against the Bengals at Cleveland Brown Stadium. Right now, there's not an indication that they're going to kick the young man to the curb. The guess would be that you may see them sign somebody to the practice squad, or maybe even look to raid somebody in a team that has kickers on the practice squad. I think there's at least 5 teams that have placed kickers on their practice squad right now. But right now, the indication is that they're not going to make an immediate move with him.
That makes sense. We'll see, tomorrow, Tuesday. Sometimes you see tryouts on Tuesday or Wednesdays. Maybe they'll bring in a kicker for tryouts, and we'll have that on the OBR if it happens. Pete, fans are looking for someone to blame. You hang out on the forums. There were people blaming, Andrew Barry. There were people blaming Bubba Ventrone. Of course, there are people blaming the kicker. Do you assign blame anywhere? Do you think that the Browns, as an organization, made a bad decision to send a youngster out there to kick in the game opener or the season opener?
I mean, I don't fault the Browns for sending a rookie out there. God knows this happens every year, and Browns fans are mad that they see some rookie become a star overnight elsewhere. In fact, most people are sitting there going, why can't we find a rookie to come and be that guy rather than trotting out veteran after veteran after veteran? Look, ultimately, Andre Schmidt's got to make his kicks. Even on the picture, I don't know if that's how he wants Corey Bojorquez to hold the ball or not. All I can say is when I watched the kick, his plant foot looked like it was aimed right where it's supposed to be, and the ball just got pushed. So, hard to say for sure what happened other than at the end of the day, he's got to make his kicks, and he knows that more than anybody, as he was quick to own it himself. Beyond that, you own the opportunities that the Browns didn't make elsewhere. 4th and 5, having a perfectly designed play call just dropped in the middle of the field that could have not only moved the chains and put them potentially in scoring position, but may have gone for significant yardage. Or, Logan Wilson, the linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals, made a heck of a play when he got his fingers on what looked to be a wide open screen to David Njoku. Yeah. They had 3 linemen and basically 1 Bengal between those 3 and Njoku. Logan Wilson saved that play. It looked like he could still be running.
That was a huge play.
Yeah, I mean, so when you look at these things, yeah, look, ultimately you're going to boil it down and go the last guy to screw up, and certainly the guy, baseball, basketball, these are easy sports where you can see the guy either hit the ball or he didn't. The ball either went in the basket or it didn't. Kicking's the one thing where it's very easy to look at and go, the ball either went between the uprights or it didn't. So that's where it's easy to assign blame, and there's no escaping that.
Right, absolutely. Now, there are some people out there, Lane, who are looking a little bit askew at Bubba Ventrone at this point. Bubba Ventrone is the guy who said, had to have had input into saying Schmidt's our guy, right? We're good at kicker, all that sort of thing. And the Browns did face some field position issues, some nice returns by the Bengals as well. From your perspective, is that fair criticism for Ventrone, or was it just a matter of a kicker kicking wide right on a day and, we'll continue forward?
Well, you're getting the wrath of everything being placed somewhere now because blame has to be associated to a loss. And, if Schmidt makes the kicks, we're not going to be hearing all that noise today. Special teams did not play badly. Special teams was solid. couple opportunities that they had could have manufactured better stops in the return game, but overall special teams did not play poorly. One thing you may want to question is the decision at the end of the game, that they want to go for the block. It's hard to call, but as far as Ventrone's concerned, his unit did what they were supposed to do. The place kicker just didn't do his job. It didn't look like there was any mechanical or technical issue with the snap, with the hold. It looks like he just pushed the ball. And you're going to have that. He might have gotten the yips later in that game. You just don't know. So that's what you're going to find out this week in practice. I'm sure he's going to be kicking quite a bit, and we'll find out what's going to happen. But right now, you can't just place the finger on Ventrone's unit.
All right, fair enough. Now, the other key to the game that's not pictured here are those turnovers. The Browns have a ferocious defense with a devastating front four, and they cause all kinds of chaos, but they don't create turnovers, Pete. From my perspective, it does seem like an only in Cleveland thing, because only in Cleveland can you have a defense that good that doesn't generate a lot of turnovers. From the coaching perspective, is there something coaches can do to, get this defense more focused on turnovers? I assume that they're already doing it. It's just not happening for them. They had such a bad turnover ratio last year.
Well, at least as far as interceptions go, which is where most of the blame gets placed in terms of lack of production. This is what happens when you play as much man coverage as the Browns do. You're not playing to get interceptions on that. If you get interceptions, they're going to come from safeties. They're going to come from underneath linebackers. You're traditionally not going to get those things. Those come in teams that play heavy zone. They're able to jump on the football. They're able to see the ball coming and make plays on it, as opposed to man, where these guys are reacting late, just trying to play. If they have proper eye discipline, they're not looking at the ball. They're looking at the receiver's hands and playing it through that way. The Browns have been really good at that. If they've gotten sort of quote unquote bad luck, it's that they aren't creating a lot of fumbles. And most of that has come through the pass rush. Myles Garrett has obviously been very good in terms of creating fumbles in that category. The other reason the Browns, at least in a game like this one, is they don't get a whole lot of turnovers. It is the thing you got to keep an eye on. The Bengals didn't run very many plays. So right. You don't have a lot of opportunities. And that's ultimately what we want. The Browns ran something, I think 71 plays on offense. I think the Bengals were in the 40s. So that's good, but it also inherently limits your ability to create turnovers. Last but not least, you're playing a really good quarterback. Joe Burrow is no fool. And if you go back to 2023, and I'm not trying to besmirch that defense, but some of the turnovers they were able to create were against either quarterbacks who are backups in place of injury or just not very good. Now, famously in that season, they also got Lamar Jackson for interceptions, some of those other things. But this is a year where they're going to play a whole lot of really good quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson this week, Jordan Love the following week. We're going to see them continue to play these guys. And what you hope will happen is the Browns will cause turnovers by basically the whole old adage of pressure breaks pipes. That's where the turnovers are going to come in. And hopefully at some point we're going to see a little bit more in terms of trap coverages, which based on what I've seen, it seems like the Browns want to do a little bit more with that. That is not something you could really do with Juan Thornhill because he played a true center field. Ronnie Hickman doesn't do that. I mean, it's not to say he can't, but when you see Ronnie Hickman, he's a lot closer to the line of scrimmage a whole lot more often, and they're varying up how they're going to use him and Delpit, which may create some circumstances. And then the other guy that we're all sitting here waiting to see when it's going to happen, I emphasize when, is when Carson Schwarzenegger comes underneath and picks off one of these passes, because he's just such a rangy football player that it's eventually going to happen.
Lane, do you have any thoughts on that? The whole turnover issue that the Browns seem to be facing?
Well, Pete said it best, is that, pressure creates breaks. And what's going to happen here is that the Browns played, probably 45% man yesterday off the top of my head, just when I've seen a few things where they had some unique looks with the safeties and linebackers dropping, just to create something on tape and a different look that Burrow may not have expected to see. I think as we go along, we're going to see more opportunities create themselves. I think Schwartz is going to widen his grasp on what he wants to do here. I expect the two veteran safeties are going to play a role here, just like they yesterday. And at some point, it's gonna open up. The only problem is that we're talking about playing teams with very good quarterbacks, offensive systems, and it's going to be interesting to see how this defense evolves and grasps what they're going to be seeing over here in the next few weeks, because there's some difficult challenges. And against the Ravens here, this is going to be an interesting game because you just don't stop the Ravens. But Schwartz's defense, now with Carson Schlesinger in the middle, and somebody's going to spy, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens here in the front seven with Derrick Henry. It's a game that the Browns could really make interesting if they play their game.
Right. We'll get to the Redbirds here in just a little bit. Meantime, let's take a detour off to Pro Football Focus. This week's episode of Did They Watch the Same Game I Watched, presented by Pro Football Focus. Look at the top of that list. This is the Pro Football Focus ratings for offense. And at the top of that list, you have Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, and Joe Flacco, three ancient veterans. And you have a rookie, Dylan Sampson, show up. Obviously, Lane, this team's offensive line and the quarterback being carried by old guys, you talk to people in the know, how keenly aware are they that these guys are walking away, likely to walk away next year, at least, Bitonio at the very least, and maybe all three of them.
Well, that's what they look at when you see the young linemen that they've had in camp, that they have on the roster, the practice squad. They're fully aware. And the interesting thing is that they're in the contract status that they could be out of here. And you'll probably see at least a couple of them gone. And that's what they're working with these younger guys, like a Zach Zinter, things like that, to progress this along. The funny thing is that's an old guy leading a bunch of old guys and some drafted rookies who just exploded on the scene in the opener. And we're just going to have to wait and see what the progress is going to be, because, 17 weeks is a long season. It's a lot of time to get experience. And undoubtedly, historically, with the Browns offensive line, somebody goes down, and we're going to see one of these young guys in here. So it's a wait and see mode, but they're aware of what their situation is.
Yeah, I'm sure that they are. Pete, you've been a Dylan Sampson advocate for a little while now. You've talked about him positively. Were you surprised at how effective he was in the passing game?
No, because I bet against whatever Darryl Ryder says about guys named Dylan at this point. So no, look, I yes, genuinely surprised at just how some of the balls he caught, where he's basically catching it off the carpet, were really impressive. And you didn't get it. If you're sitting here as a Tennessee Volunteers fan, you're probably sitting here going, "Why didn't we do this?" He was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, and they used him in a variety of ways. I would say I wasn't surprised in the sense that when the Browns drafted him and then Quinshon Judkins, it made all the sense in the world that Judkins is going to eventually be your workhorse back. But Dylan Sampson wasn't just going to be a guy who came and occasionally spelled him. You were going to put both of these guys on the field at the same time and find different ways to use them. And Dylan Sampson, you watch him in college, they especially this last year, because they ran into a rut where Tennessee didn't have the dynamic receiving threats they've been having for years. So it was all Dylan Sampson. So they were asking this guy to beat basically 11 defenders on every play. So you sit here as the Browns and you go, I'm going to take the best player on Tennessee's offense, will be 21 this Sunday, which is insane unto itself. And I'm just going to take a few defenders out of his way. I'm going to ask him to beat one guy. I'm going to ask him to beat two guys. And you're making it so much more reasonable for him to come in and make an impact. And that's exactly what you saw. I think there were a couple of times where you're generally surprised at his ability to make guys miss. But for him, it's so much more open for him than he's ever been accustomed to. So it really felt comfortable. So that part of it was really valuable. made a really important workaround for what was a completely ineffective running game. And I give credit to both him and Stefanski, because that sort of, along with their use of Harold Fannin, sort of circumvented not having a running game. That became your running game. But, you sit here and you look ahead and you go, it probably week 3 maybe is one week likely to see Judkins really get going. You can easily see a scenario where both these guys are on the field. They're going to use both of them in the passing game and just find all the ways they want to use them. And then the combination of you may not have the dynamic wide receivers that you want ultimately down the road. You want to have more of those guys. But in Dylan Sampson and Harold Fannin, you have 2 guys that are a pain in the ass for defenses to pick up, because it's not like you can just go, oh, I'll put a linebacker on this guy or I'll put a safety on this guy. You have to make real choices, and they moved him around the formation in that game and forced the Bengals to make those choices, which is exactly what I want to see from this, and I expect to continue, particularly against a team like the Baltimore Ravens next week.
Yeah, and another interesting thing with that is that they got Cincinnati. Cincinnati played a lot more man than they're accustomed to too, and it's what we talked about after the draft. When we talked about Dylan Sampson and Harold Fannin, that the Browns were going to find ways to get these guys on the field. They were going to flank them out, and they were going to try to create mismatches with these guys. And true to form, what we saw in the opener is that that's what they did with these guys. And Sampson just brings an explosive quality that this offense lacks. And it was really enlightening to watch the offense while they had some issues in execution here and there. You could see what the plan is, and it's only going to get more interesting when they get Judkins back. Remove Jerome Ford from the equation of doing much of anything. This offense has a chance to evolve and do some things with the addition of the youth that they got in this draft.
Yeah, I want to follow up with you, Lane, on the wide receiver position. You notice they're not at the top of the list here. They're not at the bottom of the list. After last Sunday's game, are you getting more sold on what the Browns are doing at the wide receiver position? Obviously, Tillman did fairly well. Didn't see much from Jamari Thrash. What are your opinions on how things are going at the receiver position right now behind Jerry Jeudy?
I mean, besides the drops that we watched them have, it's pretty much what you expected. I would have expected to see a little bit more of Jabari Thrash. He was something that they were a lot of talk, a lot of noise heading into the opener that he was going to have more of a role. Same with Isaiah Bond. They were both out there for some plays. Bond got an early catch on that screen. But it's pretty much what you could have expected in the opener. I think that receiver room is something that's going to just evolve and progress over time. Some more familiarity, because we were looking at a guy like Thrash who wasn't in this offense last year. Bond, it's a new offense for him. Tillman, it's new. So there's nuances at the position and the scheme that are change things a little bit, but I expect that room to grow as we go along.
I would hope so. Pete, do you concur?
I think perfect world, the Browns are going to keep adding to that room, beyond this season. Like, if you could design the room the way you really wanted, Jerry Jeudy's your 2, Cedric Tillman's 3, and Jamari Thrash and Isaiah Bond are in sort of that 3/4, ancillary pieces role. If any of those guys can sort of go above that, and Jerry Jeudy's certainly not a bad one. It's just if you could design it exactly how you wanted, that's what you do. Now, if they can just get even a guy that's sort of an upgrade over Tillman, I think that would really set this thing up. But with what you have in Njoku and Fannin and what you have with Sampson, you get all these pieces that can really create pressure points that can open these guys up. So, look, I think Cedric Tillman's a good wide receiver. Not a great wide receiver, good. But when you have these other things that are creating pressure points, it allows a guy like him to do exactly what you want. But you're not going to stop looking because you want to get as many dynamic receiving threats as you can. So at some point, whether it's a trade or in the draft or something, I expect they're going to take another big swing at that position to try to get the big time playmakers. Because if you want to look ahead, but we're already talking about the offensive line, and quarterback, obviously. I don't think they're sitting there going, "Oh, we're satisfied with what we have as a receiver." I think Andrew Berry is greedy in the best way in terms of that stuff, and they're not going to sit there and go, "We have enough playmakers." They're going to look at teams like the Ravens and go, "We can get as many of these guys as possible to create as many different ways to cause problems for defenses."
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about something else on this slide as well, Pete. The name at the bottom, DeJuan Jones, poorly rated by Pro Football Focus for his performance last Sunday. I'm a guy, I'm a typical web dork / fan. I follow the ball, when I'm watching the game on television. I'm not necessarily staring at what the left tackle is doing. So the only times I notice him are when he gets beat or when he gets called for a penalty. And I'm just curious at those moments where DeJuan Jones wasn't being flagged for something. I don't recall him getting beat on a pass rush too badly, but I may just be misremembering. What was he doing there that has people so critical?
Well, I mean, as far as PFF's grading goes, they just say there's penalties. So you get degraded for, he was called for holding twice. He had false starts, and then I think he lined up too far in the backfield and got called for illegal formation. They're going to ding you for all that stuff. Now, to me, and even in the broadcast, they basically called the holding, at least one of them, farcical. Both of them looked really bad. Now, Having said that, DeJuan Jones didn't drape himself in glory in terms of answering the question, "This is our left tackle of the present and future." But, Trey Hendrickson also didn't ruin the game. Trey Hendrickson's a phenomenal defensive end. You expect him to be able to cause problems for your left tackle. So DeJuan Jones has to continue to work to get better. But, we're not talking about this game where, Joe Flacco got knocked out with, a couple fumbles and stuff because Trey Hendrickson just beat DeJuan, just abused him over the course of the game. He's got to keep growing. He's got to keep getting comfortable. And the one thing that's going to continue to be a problem, I suspect, is his run blocking. It's just he moves like a bookcase. That can be very valuable in certain cases, but he's just not very agile in terms of being able to adjust to certain things. So he's got to be very good in terms of taking the appropriate steps and angles to put himself in the right position where his body can just do the job. So when we go to this, next week against the Ravens, they don't have a Trey Hendrickson. Is he going to be able to respond and get more comfortable and get better? I should hope so, but I'm also not sitting here panicking about what I saw from DeJuan Jones in this game.
Fair enough. I want to also, Lane, point out to you that we've got a couple of offensive linemen there at the top of the PFF grades in Bitonio and Teller, but the team couldn't run. Their average was like 2.5 yards, maybe less than 2.5 yards, running the ball on the ground. Is that a matter of B.J. Hill and the Cincinnati defense being so good, or is it the shift to the wide zone, or what the heck happened there? I thought we were supposed to be a running team.
Well, let's start with this. You got this. We have this PFF highlights up there, and you got these scores up there. And me personally, I just use that as a loose reference because I believe in a lot of the eye test.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about what happened inside there, you can look and see that we averaged 2.4 yards per carry. Let's look back and see how many times that we've seen a back that you missed the hole, late to the hole, took the wrong approach. There's so many things that encompass what happens with a run game and its execution and fundamentally work. And we've seen some of that on Sunday. I thought Bitonio was okay. I thought Teller was okay. I thought Ethan Posick was okay. I didn't see anything that was exceptional. I seen that you could win football games with how they played. Cincinnati was very physical up front. They ran some stunts. Cincinnati played very well up front, especially early. And when we go talk about DeJuan Jones, just like Pete said, you look at the score and you question it. You have to look at the eye test and see what this guy did. Was this guy getting beat? Did he cause the offense to collapse? No, he didn't. He didn't play overly well, but he wasn't terrible. It was an average performance something you have to build upon, and I think that's what you've seen across the board with the offensive line. There was some mistakes, and we've seen mistakes from the running back. So it's something that you have to clean up, work forward after the season opening loss.
Pete, same question to you. Offensive ineffectiveness, running the ball. How are you diagnosing that, and what do we do to adapt to face the dreaded Ratbirds on Sunday?
Well, just to sort of dive into PFF's grading, pass blocking is way more valuable in their grading than run blocking, and that's why part of why DeJuan Jones is so well. He didn't do well in either, according to their grading. Bitonio and Teller were solid in pass protection. Look, I don't think they got a whole lot of movement. I have concerns there. If you're asking me, did running backs miss holes? Raheem Sanders, right by the goal line, third down. If he follows Joel Bitonio, he walks in the end zone, but he missed it and ended up running behind the other blocker and got stuffed. Now they got in and scored, but that's sort of the egregious mistake you can easily see and go, yeah, he missed the hole. By and large, I want to see them get more movement up front. I would say my reaction to what I saw on Sunday is alarmed, given that the Bengals couldn't stop us in the preseason running the football, as in you, me, and Lane, and then to look like they did. Now, look, preseason can be a misnomer and can give you a bad read of situations, but when I compare that to what Baltimore is going to run out there this week, or what we're going to see from Green Bay, who looked tremendous defensively against a very stout Detroit offensive line, and Minnesota and so on and so forth, that is worrying. That's terrifying. The one thing I would hope for, and I think this is largely a thing that is true across the league, certainly not just limited to the Browns, run blocking in practice and the preseason is completely different from actually doing it in the regular season. And the biggest improvement, and I don't care what level of football you're talking about, is from week 1 to week 2. So I am alarmed. I am worried. I do not feel good about the situation based on what we've seen. I'm hoping Quinshon Judkins can help with that. But if you're sitting there going, where's the hope? It's that they were able to get in there and see these things that they weren't doing correctly, because there were guys that were just not blocked or not handled correctly. If they can make some of those adjustments and you can just be average, that would make all the difference in the world. And that's all that we're asking for from this group. And that's all that we needed from them last year. So that's where you sort of look at this and go, okay, I'll give you a week and we'll see where we're at.
Lane, do you agree? Are you a little bit alarmed?
Oh, you have to be alarmed because they got no push at the spot. They just lost leverage. They got moved around. It was something you don't want to see, but it's something you can see. And it's like I alluded to just a moment ago, and Pete himself, that, you want to see that jump from week 1 to week 2, because now they've been in the real trenches, not training camp stuff or this preseason stuff. Now your 5 guys are out there and they're doing their thing. I think that they're going to run into a potential buzzsaw this weekend, because Baltimore is just pressure heavy, and that's their game, and that's what they're going to do. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Browns stand up to it. Pass protection wise, they were solid. Run blocking, they were mediocre, and you need more than mediocre. And it's going to be interesting to see how they progress here going into week 2.
All right. Well, that's with the offense on PFF. Let's briefly take a look at the defense, where you see, better scores you would expect given, what happened in that game and the defense's effectiveness. You had Carson Schlesinger up there with 90. Isaiah McGuire rated well. Devin Bush did very well. Greg Newsome, the oft-criticized cornerback, graded very, very well. But you're seeing the impact of this draft class already, Lane, with Mason Graham in the middle. Obviously didn't make any, splashy plays, but already contributing in the middle. Schlesinger standing out. Sampson standing out. We haven't even seen Judkins yet. Dylan Gabriel or Shadur Sanders in the background getting schooled up. It's a little bit early, but it's been a little while, in my opinion, since we've seen a rookie class have this sort of immediate impact that these guys seem to be having on this team, Lane. Do you remember anything like this in the post-betrayal era? Is this Andrew Barry already establishing himself as one of his best drafts as the GM?
Well, after 1 week, everything's all, nice and pretty, and you got your rose-colored glasses on because
right.
It's 1 week, and the rookies and the young guys are on the field and they're playing, and they were productive, and that's what you hope to see when you're selecting guys at the top of a round and guys of talent. What was a deep draft, and these guys, they played well. They selected guys that fit what they want to do. Schlesinger, they wanted a guy who was just going to run, hit, and up the middle of the defense is where they had a problem. Perfect fit. Same thing with Mason Graham. The guy who surprised me really on Sunday was Devin Bush. He was all over the field, played very well. And that was you could see the intense work that was put into with the defense this entire summer, because they came out and played very solid fundamental football, limited the mistakes. They were able to ratchet it up when they had to. And it was really good to see a young guy like Isaiah McGuire, just picking up where he left off last year, creating some havoc. It was just a real good performance, and it was nice to see these rookies and the young veterans, coming into their own in that first week, and the spotlight wasn't too big for them, and they played very well.
Yeah, Pete, Devin Bush, offseason issues. Last year, I think he finished fairly strong. He came on as the year was going on, if I remember correctly. Yep. Were you surprised at all by what you saw on Sunday?
Surprised by Devin Bush, perhaps. Carson Schlesinger has yet to fail. He just has been dynamite every step of the way. So until he struggles, I'm waiting for it. But he was outstanding in his first go. Isaiah McGuire, I never understood the talk of Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire in some competition, and people coming out and claiming that Alex Wright even won, because you just watch this guy play, and he's been terrific. He's one of the best run defenders in the league last year at defensive end. He had a really good pass rush win rate. He just wasn't yet there in terms of pressures and sacks. And last year, his best day of the season in terms of pressures was 5 against the Miami Dolphins, and that was week 17. Well, he had 5 pressures in this game and a sack, and wasn't just good in terms of he was pretty good. He was everything that Myles Garrett has been waiting for from a young guy. They've had guys who come in. Olivier Vernon was a tremendous pro. They got some nice stuff out of Zarius Smith. They got some good games out of Jadeveon Clowney. If this is what Isaiah McGuire is going to be, and Amarius Mims may not be the greatest test for this in terms of a 1 week sample size, but if this is what Isaiah McGuire is, we're going to be talking about a contract extension. We're going to be talking about locking him up for years and years and years for a large amount of money, and these guys being your 2 bookends for quite a while. The other one that does not surprise me is Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome has been angling for this for years. He wanted to be back outside. He has all the familiarity with the Bengals, has played well against this group. There are people who doubted him against this matchup. He's played well against the Bengals and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase in previous meetings, and he would really like to make a whole lot of money. He knows the spotlight's on him. So if there was one guy I thought was going to play well this week, it was Greg Newsome. And look, I will continue to say this. Greg Newsome is smarter than he acts. And he made a couple of really heady plays on the field. The one that just stands out to me is where he is covering an outside receiver, sees Noah Fant coming across to catch the ball, and he catches the ball, but Greg Newsome's able to come off his coverage and tackle him and take away any yards after catch from that standpoint. That was just a really good football play. Now, is Greg Newsome going to come back next week against Baltimore and be great? To be determined. But this gave you the old feels of when they drafted him in 2021, and we were talking about Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome for years and years as your bookend corners. If this is who he is, again, just like Isaiah McGuire, if this is who he is, the answer is going to be yes, and we're going to be talking about extending him in some form or fashion in terms of a contract, because coming into this year, there seemingly was one contract extension waiting for one of these corners. It was either going to be Martin Emerson or Greg Newsome. Martin Emerson coming off a terrible year. Greg Newsome coming off a pretty lackluster year himself. Emerson gets hurt. Now Greg Newsome has all the opportunity. Can he carry this thing over and capitalize and get that big contract? We'll see.
All right.
You know, Greg Newsome was challenged back in the spring and into the summer when training camp started to, you know, improve. Be consistent. Stop grabbing. These are things that were just beat into him and coached into him. And he spent a lot of time with Denzel Ward, and they worked on things. And it's really getting the ability out of Newsome because it's there. It's in there. He's shown he can play this game at a very high level. It's getting him to be consistent, not be injured, and just play the game and keep all the noise and the nonsense aside. He made a couple plays, like Peter alluded to, in that game Sunday that you would not have seen him make last year. His awareness just wasn't where it was. On Sunday, he played one of the best games he's played fundamentally. It's going to be interesting to see if he can carry that in the week too, because consistency has been his issue.
Pete, you can see there's a linebacker at the bottom of that score. Mahmoud Diabate bid on a play fake. He didn't get a ton of snaps. If you're his coach, do you have him see less snaps after this, or is it just an error that's understandable from the perspective of a linebacker where facing a rushing game that had been somewhat effective to that point?
Well, I mean, the score is a product of him playing, I think, 9 snaps. And I was frankly surprised he got the 9 snaps. It seems like the Browns really want him on the field because they really like what he can do. I'm right there with him. I think he has a ton of ability. I think in a perfect world, the Browns are hoping that they get to a point where Schlesinger and Diabate are your 2 guys that never come off the field, and they can sort of extend Diabate and he can sort of carry this thing over. Even more perfect world, JOK comes back next year and you have those 3 guys for the foreseeable future. Having said that, for what you're talking about, that goal line situation, look, you're not just Diabate's job is not just your only thing is the tight end. You are sort of given sort of this if then statement of responsibility, because if that tight end blocks down or something, then yes, Diabate has to come down and fill against the run, because if he doesn't, he allows himself just to focus on the tight end. Then when that ball comes running right through the gap, he's not there and it's an easy score. Having said that, he either, sort of jumped the gun in terms of trying to read it, or thought he could beat the play before it was going to get there, misread it and allowed Noah Fant to be wide open. Those are, those type of plays are things you work and you hammer, and perhaps, this is a situation where him just not being on the practice field enough might hurt him in this scenario, but it's one of those things you learn from and try to get better. And ultimately, look, this is going to be where Jim Schwartz can talk a whole lot about all the things he likes about this game. The one thing he's going to be pissed off about, I already know it, he's in that meeting room talking about red zone efficiency, because he hated it last year too. And their first 2 trips in the red zone this year, they gave up touchdowns. So Jim Schwartz will find a reason to be pissed off about something, and this gave him the fuel he wanted.
All right.
Third down efficiency was it didn't start off well for him, but they overcame in the second half. It would be interesting to see. But I know that third down and not getting off the field is something that drives him absolutely out of his mind.
Yeah, I want to talk in just a minute here about what happened with the Browns defense in the first half versus the second half. But before that, Lane, I want to talk a little bit about the running back position. No one was effective on Sunday. No one. I mean, Sampson got close to 3 yards a carry, I think. Other than that, it was a disaster. Jerome Ford stood out, though. 6 runs, 8 yards, 1.2 yards per attempt, 1 reception. He got an ankle tackled, 3 yards deep. With Judkins coming back, do you think this front office is thinking about Jerome Ford's future with the team, or do you think they'll make a move somewhere else to fit Judkins in?
That's a great question. Jerome Ford He didn't show anything, absolutely anything in the preseason. Didn't show anything in that opener. Does not run with authority. Does not. His vision has got to be questioned. It was just, it's like he didn't exist. And I'm not sure if that's something or someone that you really want to go forward with or can go forward with. Because to be honest with you, Sanders showed me more than Ford did. And he didn't show a lot, but at least he showed drive, showed some power. Jerome Ford shows nothing, and I'm not sure what his roster position is going to be here when Adkins is officially back. You don't know if they're going to drop somebody from the back end of the roster or they're going to take one of these running backs out. And it's going to come down, if they take a running back out, it's either going to be Sanders or Ford. And right now, I may want to keep Sanders. It's just something I just can't get my hands wrapped around.
Pete, what are your thoughts on this? Do you want to build the running back room around the youngsters or keep investing in Jerome Ford?
Well, what I want to do would be probably go younger. I liked Raheem Sanders coming out of the draft. He's more interesting to me. And Jerome Ford, they did his contract so that this is it. So if you're just looking at it from that standpoint, the Browns have, worked in and out after this year for Jerome Ford. So he is now auditioning theoretically. I mean, there's a world where he could audition and win back his job with the Browns in a new contract. But really, it's more likely he's auditioning for 31 other teams. So, look, he is inconsistent at everything. He is inconsistent in using his physicality. He's inconsistent on, there are situations where he will run outside and see a DB and then try to dance as opposed to putting his shoulder down, even though he's 215 pounds and strong. There are times where he doesn't see well, but then there are times where he hits home runs, and you sit there and you're just amazed at his ability, both as a runner and pass catcher. This was genuinely awful, and contrasting it against Dylan Sampson, it just made Dylan Sampson look even that much more impressive that he just got here, and Jerome Ford looked that ineffective. But in order for the Brown, if I'm going to use my eyes based on what we're seeing, Raheem Sanders, I like the use of him at the up back. I liked him using him down by the goal line. I don't know what he's doing in practice, but you got to get more eyes on him, because I think there is a world where he can be really useful and fits what they want to do. But all you've seen him do is run up the middle a couple of times. So, maybe this is the move. This is the week where you start to shift that, and Raheem Sanders gets those reps, and then the Browns get to a point where they're comfortable enough where they can cut Jerome Ford, eat the guaranteed salary that they promised him, and there might be a world where they can put him back on the practice squad, because I just don't know if there's that many teams that are going to be in the market for what he offers. But stranger things have happened. I think this always comes down to these roster decisions, and when you make these projections, always come down to, if you're Andrew Berry, who do you think you can get back to your practice squad? If it is Raheem Sanders, you're probably going to cut Raheem Sanders. If it's Jerome Ford, you're probably going to cut Jerome Ford.
All right, fair enough. Let's go on to what happened with the defense yesterday. And what happened was, the first time the Bengals got the ball, they marched 68 yards pretty convincingly in a workmanlike fashion down the field to get a touchdown. In the second quarter, they had to drive of 54 yards. For the rest of the game, they got exactly 19 yards. So let's talk first about what the heck happened at halftime. And I'm going to point this one to you, Pete. I didn't hear of any major adjustments the team made. It just seemed like they were playing better in the second half, but something must have happened. Did Schwartz get in their face? Did they make adjustments? What do you think happened between, the first half where the Bengals were able to move the ball and the second half where the Bengals could not do a damn thing?
Well, it's always important to note that there is no such thing as a halftime adjustment. They are constantly working and going. Most of the time, the assistant coaches can barely get down to the locker room before they are right back out and having to go out. So this happens live as this is going on. The Bengals made it a point to try to run the ball, to try to reduce the exposure of Joe Burrow, to try to keep him safe effectively. And they were able to do that. Some of that was just a matter of Mason Graham getting comfortable, getting accustomed to the speed of the game and going from there. Some of it was, I thought the linebacker fits early were a little cattywampus. There are a couple plays, like the touchdown that they ran, he basically was stopped in the backfield, but nobody could actually tackle him. So he was able to find a wide open hole. There were a couple plays like that where guys, either Mason Graham, I'll pick on, not that he was bad, but there were times where he got into the backfield and was sort of able to be taken to the ground. He might have gotten a tackle for loss, but he just lost his legs. And then it allowed Chase Brown, who's a talented running back, to be able to find a hole and make a play from that standpoint. So, yes, they adjust on the fly. Yes, they did change some things to try to get more comfortable and ultimately sort of wrest control of the game, just getting accustomed to what the Bengals were doing. But that is an ongoing process, and it's trying to implement it as you go from drive to drive. And even the first drive, if you're watching it live, it didn't feel very good. But it wasn't a case where the Bengals were putting up explosive plays. They didn't have a single one explosive plays being passes over 20 yards or runs over 10. The only run they had that was 10 yards was called back for a hold. Everything else was seemingly just enough to keep the chains moving. That's all it takes. But it's not as if the Browns were getting just bullied down the field. It's just that little bit of a difference is all it took. And then the Browns sort of corrected and got through that. Mason Graham got better. You saw Carson Schwessinger and Devin Bush step up. I think that's where the change really happened, and just those slight adjustments that allowed those guys to figure out what they were doing and move from there.
Well, I have been taught by popular culture that at halftime, the coach stands up at a whiteboard and draws some zeros and X's and draws some lines around there, and then magical things happen. Lane, is that not what occurred? Pete has disabused me of this notion. What did you see happen, in that game as the game went on?
Yeah, it doesn't work that way anymore. They're coaching and changing on the fly, like Pete said, on the sideline. Everybody's got pads and getting them rammed in their face. Like you saw in that opening drive, and those opening couple of drives for the Bengals was, the Browns defense lost the tight ends about 3 times. They couldn't get a handle on Chase Brown. He was just, making plays and, being dynamic. You got some Browns defenders, especially the young guys, getting their feet wet a little bit. It's their first real show. And you got to look at Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a fabulous quarterback. And he was able to get the ball out. Their offense and that game plan was predicated on getting the ball out of his hands. And they did a very good job doing that. It's just that the Browns, they adjust a little bit. They move some safety play around a little bit. And they started picking up the tight end that was a problem early. And once they figured all that out, the Cincinnati offense went dormant. And a lot of that had to do with them being on the sideline for very long periods of time and losing that flow and momentum that you see and having to go back out there cold and start again. Let's do this again. The Browns had a great game plan, and they executed pretty damn well. It's just unfortunate how it all came down. And that was offensively and defensively. But the defense, you got to take your hats off to, because they played one hell of a game, and it's just unfortunate it all went down the way it did.
All right, let's finish up here talking about the angry Ratbirds that we're going to find out in Baltimore. The Browns head into Baltimore Sunday, where the Ravens are celebrating 30 years of franchise theft and other skullduggery, hypocritically celebrating as a team franchise they tried to steal came to town. But boy, are they good. The Bills managed to beat them 41-40 on Sunday night. Derrick Henry, 18 runs, 169 yards. Jackson, 70 yards on the ground. Flowers, 7 receptions for 143 yards. Lane, my question to you, the impressive performance by Derrick Henry on Sunday night, Was that more a matter of something that the Browns need to worry about next Sunday, or is it more a matter of the Bills' defense being unable to stop the run effectively?
Well, Derrick Henry's done some of the same to the Browns. They hold them, contain them to 2 yards of carry for 14 carries, and then he busts off a 70-yard run. It's just that's what Derrick Henry does, and that's what that Baltimore offense does. Baltimore, watching that game, it's the same Baltimore Ravens. They're physical up front. They just beat on you. And then they use electric playmakers like Lamar Jackson and now Zay Flowers to make things happen. It's going to be an interesting matchup for the Browns. I think the Browns are going to do what they have done in the past. They're going to contain Derrick Henry to a point, and then he's just going to take one off the top. That's what this defense has been known to let happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of the style, the aggressive, and the challenging type of defense that there's a chance to be exposed. And Baltimore is going to do that. They're going to try to expose them because the Browns are play man, and something's going to give. It's going to be interesting. But, yeah, I'm worried about Derrick Henry because he's going to average 2.5 yards of carry, and then he's going to bust one for 50. It's just that how do you contain him overall, and how bad does it hurt you?
You're reminding me of Butch Davis talking about LaDainian Tomlinson. I think it was Tomlinson. Oh, yeah. That's right. Jamal Lewis saying essentially, yeah, we kept them to 10 yards other than those 2 90-yard runs, whatever.
Yep.
And I certainly fear the same thing when they play Derrick Henry. Pete, how does this team handle Lamar Jackson without JOK flying around at that linebacker position? Is Carson Schlesinger an able replacement to try to slow down a quarterback like Lamar Jackson? Or what do you do if you're the defensive coordinator to try to stop Lamar Jackson or at least slow him down a little bit?
Well, the first thing you do is you play zone the entire way. You have to. You cannot play man for more than spot duty against Lamar Jackson because you have to have 11 guys potentially with eyes on, because if he breaks the pocket, at that point it is on. And you cannot have guys watching the receiver as the receiver just takes them off 30 yards out of the way and Lamar Jackson suddenly runs the ball 60 yards down the other way. So you're playing zone a heavy amount. Probably the most zone they will play all year happens against the Ravens. Part of it is stopping the run. And last year, the Browns, when they beat the Ravens, they held Derrick Henry to 73 yards rushing. They held him to 1.9 yards before contact compared to 3.6 in the second matchup when he ran all over them. And that is a big part of this whole thing, is being able to stop there, because if you can do that, and I think Jim Schwartz will do that because he did the same thing with Saquon Barkley, then you can be a little bit more, disciplined with how your defensive line goes. I know he likes to say, hey, we're going to give you guys all the freedom in the world. You can do whatever you want. You cannot do that against Lamar Jackson. You have to play more gap sound football. Myles Garrett and Isaiah McGuire and the edges have to be able to play outside and squeeze in. That part of it can be done, has been done by the Browns in the past. Myles Garrett has had success. Isaiah McGuire can do those things. And then the piece de resistance with what the Browns have this year is the interior. They have better athletes on the inside. And the thing that gets you in trouble is when those defensive ends fly upfield and you create spacing where Lamar Jackson can sort of step up and just run out through giant gaping holes because the defensive interior can't get any pass rush or pressure in general. That's where this thing becomes a problem. Is Carson Schlesinger going to be part of it? Absolutely. If for no other reason, they will use him to sort of stand over an offensive line, mug a guard or something, and then drop out, or force them to be honest to him to create one-on-one matchups for other guys. But, yeah, he can blitz. He can play spy. He can do some of those things. They have enough athletes at this. Jerome Baker can be helpful in that. Mahmoud Diabate, if he's better coming off of his quad, is better equipped for that. He can help with those things. Grant Delpit is going to be part of this whole thing, even though he's going to spend most of his time covering tight ends. It is 11 guys have to be in on this thing. It cannot, I know we talk about JOK as the Lamar stopper. It is a team effort. You have to have everybody involved in this whole thing to keep them contained, play disciplined football, and to have a specific plan. The Browns have no shortage of familiarity with this matchup. They understand how it works. And the problem you run into is you can do everything right, and occasionally Lamar Jackson will just throw a ball that will magically find its way, perfect accuracy on the spot, and all you can do, and Myles Garrett has said this at points, tip your hat to him and basically accept the fact that he just beat you because he's just that damn good.
Yeah. Understood. Lane, for old guys like me who were around in 1995, this game has a lot of meaning, with the Ratbirds celebrating their 30th anniversary of talking Art Modell into giving him his 12 pieces of silver or whatever. It has a lot of meaning for us. This Cleveland Browns team right now, do you think that they know what this game means? Beyond the X's and O's, beyond the execution of play after play after play. Is there any sense from the front office or from this team that this game is something significant?
Well, it's obvious to any football fan that the game's going to have more of a meaning to it, and there's guys in that locker room that understand that. The organization isn't running around beating a drum, making a point about what this game is, because they don't want to or need to put any additional undue pressure on them. The Browns themselves, the guys in that locker room, the guys in that coaching staff, they know they need to come out here and play a complete football game and win a football game. Any additional pressure really isn't necessary. People there know the story, and they're going to come to play Sunday, and they're going to try to win a football game. It's always personal. You always want to win. And they know that that's the team that left Cleveland, and this is Cleveland now. So they know and understand. But as far as everything else is concerned, no, it's not going to be anybody running around making noise, making the game more important than what it is. It's already a big game.
All right. Understood. Pete, we're going in to face an angry Ratbird team there at Baltimore. Frustrated, I'm sure, by the loss to the Bills. Critical game for them in front of their home fans with all the celebratory nonsense going on down there. What's the key for the Browns to come out of this with a victory? What can they, what do they have to excel at in order to come out of Baltimore with a victory? Or does it just have to be execution in every single phase?
I mean, that largely is what it comes down to. The one thing that the Browns have gotten right against Baltimore, and again, this is your ability to play zone, because you have to out of necessity, is they've had better luck creating turnovers, whether it's been interceptions or causing fumbles on Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry's obviously a little bit sensitive about it, given that his fumble sort of paved the way for the Bills to come out with a victory. The Ravens are a phenomenally talented team, but there's one inescapable fact that has plagued this team over the last several years. They do dumb shit. They over and over. Like, they are phenomenal. And yet the game last night, I mean, you sit here and you go, of course the Browns do the same stuff. The Ravens should, everybody sitting here goes, why don't you have a ring at this point? It's because they do these things to sabotage themselves. We watched them do it last year. We watched the Browns desperately try to give them the game at multiple times, and they refused to take it. In fact, the Browns actually helped them out last year because they benched this. They actually benched their free safety and moved Kyle Hamilton there, and suddenly the defense got significantly better because the Browns beat them in that game because the free safety couldn't catch the pass that the Browns threw right to him. So. Being sound and everything is critical. The Ravens are explosive. They're talented. They can do all these things really well, but they will give you opportunities to win the game if you keep yourself in it. And that's why, I hate giving credit to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but part of the reason the Pittsburgh Steelers play the Ravens so well is because they largely just hang in there play mistake free, and the Ravens will at some point give them a chance. And the Steelers, by and large, that's why this series is so close, are able to play them better than most anybody else does.
Nothing would make me happier than for the Ravens to start 0-2 this season. We will be back here on Monday night next week at 7:15 p.m. to talk about it and to break it down per usual. I want to thank everybody who has hung out with us. I wasn't able to get to a lot of the comments. New show, still getting the flow of things and all that sort of stuff. I'll try and do better in the coming weeks. But do appreciate everyone who attended and commented and was engaged with the program for joining us. And most of all, of course, thank you to Mr. Lane Adkins and Mr. Pete Smith for joining me tonight on the premiere of Gang of Three. We will see you all back here 7:15 next Monday night. Good night, everybody.